Hello everyone and welcome to this Halloween edition of The Dark Ground. In this video I will be bringing you the second video in the serial killer series, and the subject, a killer never caught, the Zodiac Killer, so stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to this special Halloween edition of The Dark Ground. In this video, as you heard from the intro, we will be talking about the serial killer never caught, as I refer to him as America's Jack the Ripper, the Zodiac Killer. So without further ado, Zodiac Killer is an American serial killer who operated in Northern California from at least the late 1960s to the early 1970s. His identity remains unknown. The killer originated the name in a series of taunting letters and cards sent to the San Francisco Bay Area press. These letters included 4 cryptograms or ciphers. Of the 4 cryptograms sent, only one has been definitively solved. The Zodiac murdered 5 known victims in Benicia, Vallejo, Napa County and San Francisco, respectively, between December 1968 and October 1969. He targeted young couples, with 2 of the men surviving attempted murder. He also murdered a male cab driver. The Zodiac himself also claimed to have murdered 37 victims. The San Francisco Police Department marked the case inactive in April 2004, but reopened it at some point prior to March 2007. The case also remains open in the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa County and Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac murders since 1969. So, although the Zodiac claimed to have committed 37 murders in letters in the newspapers, investigators agree on only 7 confirmed victims, 2 of whom survived. They are David Arthur Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, shot and killed on December the 20th, 1968 on Lake Herman Road, within the city limits of Benicia. Michael Renaud Majel, 19, and Diane Elizabeth Ferrin, 22, shot on July the 4th, 1969 in the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. While Maggio survived the attack, Ferrin was pronounced dead on arrival at Kaiser Foundation Hospital. Brian Calvin Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia Ann Shepard, 22, stabbed on September 27th, 1969 at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. Hartnell survived 8 stab wounds to the back, but Shepard died as a result of her injuries on September the 29th, 1969. Paul Lee Stein, 29, shot and killed on October the 11th, 1969 in the Presidio Heights neighborhood in San Francisco. Now, we will go into them. So the first murderers widely attributed to the Zodiac Killer were the shootings of high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday on December the 20th, 1968, on Lake Herman Road, just inside Benicia city limits. The couple were on their first date and planned to attend the Christmas concert at Hogan High School, about 3 blocks from Jensen's home. The couple instead visited a friend before stopping at a local restaurant and then driving out to Lake Herman Road. At about 10:15 p.m, Faraday parked his mother's Rambler in a gravel turnout, which was a well-known lover's lane. Shortly after 11 p.m, their bodies were found by Stella Borges, who lived nearby. The Solano County Sheriff's Department investigated the crime, but no leads developed. Utilizing available forensic data, Robert Graysmith postulated that another car pulled into the turnout just prior to 11 p.m. and parked beside the couple. The killer apparently exited the second car and walked toward the Rambler, possibly ordering the couple out of the Rambler. Jensen appeared to have exited the car first, yet when Faraday was halfway out, the killer apparently shot him in the head. The killer then shot Jensen 5 times in the back as she fled. Her body was found 28 feet from the car. The killer then drove off. And we get on to the Blue Rock Springs murder. Just before midnight on July the 4th, 1969, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Michel drove into the Blue Rocks Park in Vallejo, 4 miles, 6.4 kilometers from the Lake Herman Road murder site, and parked. While the couple sat in Ferrin's car, a second car drove into the lot and parked alongside them. It almost immediately drove away. Returning about 10 minutes later, this second car parked behind them. The driver of the second car then exited the vehicle, approaching the passenger side of Ferrin's car, carrying a flashlight and a 9mm Luger. The killer directed the flashlight into Michel's and Ferrin's eyes before shooting at them, firing 5 times. Both victims were hit and several bullets had passed through Michel and into Ferrin. The killer walked away from the car, but upon hearing Michel's moaning, returned and shot each victim twice more before driving off. On July 5, 1969, at 12:40 a.m., a man phoned the Vallejo Police Department to report and claim responsibility for the attack. The caller also took credit for the murders of Jensen and Faraday 6.5 months earlier. Police traced their call to a phone booth at a gas station at Springs Road and Tuolumne, located about 3/10 of a mile from Ferrin's home, and only a few blocks from the Vallejo Police Department. Ferrin was pronounced dead at the hospital, while Michel survived the attack despite being shot in the face, neck and chest. Michel described his attacker as a 26 to 30-year-old, 195 to 200 pounds, 88 to 91 kilogram, or possibly even more, 5 foot 8 inch, 1.73 meter, white male with short, light brown, curly hair. Now, what's interesting, on October the 1st, 1969, 3 letters prepared by the killer were received at the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. The nearly identical letters, subsequently described by a psychiatrist to have been written by someone you would expect to be brooding and isolated, took credit for the shootings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. Each letter also included 1/3 of a 408-symbol cryptogram, which the killer claimed contained his identity. The killer demanded they be printed on each paper's front page, or he would cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until they end up with 12 people over the weekend. The Chronicle published its third of the cryptogram on page 4 of the next day's edition. An article printed alongside the code quoted Vallejo Police Chief Jackie Sills as saying, "We're not satisfied that the letter was written by the murderer and requested the writer send a second letter with more facts to prove his identity." The threatened murders did not happen, and all 3 parts were eventually published. On August 7th, 1969, another letter was received at the San Francisco Examiner with the salutation, "Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." This was the first time the killer had used his name for identification. The letter was a response to Chief Stilt's request for more details that would prove he had killed Faraday, Jensen, and Ferrin. In it, the Zodiac included details about the murders which had not yet been released to the public, as well as a message to the police that when they cracked his code, they will have me. On August 8, 1969, Donald and Betty Harden of Salinas, California, cracked the 408-symbol cryptogram. It contained a misspelled message in which the killer seemed to reference the most dangerous game. He also said he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. No name appears in the decoded text, and the killer said that he would not give away his identity because it would slow down or stop his slave collection. Now we get on to the Lake Berryessa murder. On September 27, 1969, Pacific Union College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepherd were picnicking at Lake Berryessa on a small island connected by a sand spit to Twin Oak Ridge. A white man about 5 foot 11 inches (1.80 meters), weighing more than 170 pounds (77 kilograms), with combed greasy brown hair, approached them wearing a black executioner's type hood, with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes and a bib-like device on his chest that had a white 3 by 3 inch (7.6 centimeter by 7.6 centimeter) cross circle symbol on it. He approached them with a gun, which Hartnell believed to be a .45. The hooded man claimed to be an escaped convict from a jail with a two-word name in either Colorado or Montana. A police officer later inferred he had been referring to a jail in Deer Lodge, Montana, where he had killed a guard and subsequently stolen the car, explaining that he now needed the car and money to go to Mexico, as the vehicle he had been driving was too hot. He had bought pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline and told Shepherd to tie up Hartnell before he tied her up. The killer checked and tightened Hartnell's bonds after discovering Shepherd had bound Hartnell's hands loosely. Hartnell initially believed this event to be a bizarre robbery, but the man drew a knife and stabbed them both repeatedly, Hartnell suffering 6 and Shepherd 10 wounds in the process. The killer then hiked 500 yards (460 meters) back up to Knoxville Road, drew the cross-circle symbol on Hartnell's car door with a black felt tip pen and wrote beneath it, Vallejo/12/2068/7469/September 2769 6:30 by knife. At 7:40 p.m., the killer called the Napa County Sheriff's Office from a payphone to report the latest crime. The caller first stated to the operator that he wished to report a double murder, before stating that he had been the perpetrator of the crime. A phone was found, still off the hook, minutes later at the Napa Car Wash on Main Street in Napa, by KVON radio reporter Pat Stanley, only a few blocks from the sheriff's office, yet 27 miles (43 kilometers) from the crime scene. Detectives were able to lift a still wet palm print from the telephone, but were never able to match it to any suspect. After hearing their screams for help, a man and his son who were fishing in a nearby cove discovered the victims and summoned help by contacting park rangers. Napa County's sheriff's deputies Dave Collins and Ray Land were the first enforcement officers to arrive at the crime scene. Cecilia Shepherd was conscious when Collins arrived, providing him with a detailed description of the attacker. Hartnell and Shepherd were taken to Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa by ambulance. Shepherd lapsed into a coma during transport to the hospital and never regained consciousness. She died 2 days later, but Hartnell survived to recount his tale to the press. Napa County Detective Ken Narlow, who was assigned to the case from the outset, worked on solving the crime until his retirement from the department in 1987. Now we get on to the Presidio Heights murder. 2 weeks later, on October 11th, 1969, a white male passenger entered the cab driven by Paul Stein at the intersection of Mason and Geary Streets, 1 block west from Union Square in San Francisco, requesting to be taken to Washington and Maple Streets in Presidio Heights. For reasons unknown, Stein drove 1 block past Maple to Cherry Street. The passenger then shot Stein once in the head with a 9mm, took Stein's wallet and car keys, and tore away a section of Stein's bloodshed shirt tail. The passenger was observed by 3 teenagers across the street at 9:55 p.m, who called the police while the crime was in progress. They observed a man wiping the cab down before walking away towards the Presidio, 1 block to the north, 2 blocks from the crime scene. Police officer Don Falk and Eric Zelms, responding to the call, observed a white man walking along the sidewalk east on Jackson Street and stepping onto a stairway leading up the front yard of one of the homes on the north side of the street. The encounter only lasted 5 to 10 seconds. Falk estimated the white male pedestrian to be 35 to 45 years old, 5'10" tall, with a crew cut similar to but slightly older than the description of the teenagers who observed the killer in and out of Stein's cab. as a 25 to 30-year-old crew-cut white male about 5'8" to 5'9" tall. The police radio dispatcher had, however, initially alerted officers to be on the lookout for a black suspect, so Falk and Zelms drove past him without stopping. The mix-up in descriptions remains unexplained. A search ensued, but no suspects were found. This was the last officially confirmed murder by the Zodiac killer. The Stein murder was initially thought to be a routine robbery that had escalated. However, on October the 13th, the San Francisco Chronicle received a new letter from the Zodiac containing a piece of bloody shirt and taking credit for the killing. The three team witnesses worked with a police artist to prepare a composite sketch of Stein's killer. A few days later, this police artist returned, working with the witness to prepare a second composite sketch of the killer. Detective Bill Armstrong and Dave Toshi were assigned to the case. The San Francisco Police Department investigated an estimated 2,500 suspects over a period of years. On October the 14th, 1969, the Chronicle received another letter from the Zodiac, this time containing a swatch of Paul Stein's shirt tailor, as proof he was the killer. It also included a threat about killing schoolchildren on a school bus. To do this, Zodiac wrote, "Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." At 2 p.m. on October the 20th, 1969, someone claiming to be the Zodiac called the Oakland Police Department, demanding that one of two prominent lawyers, F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Belly, appear on AM San Francisco, a talk show on KGO-TV hosted by Jim Dunbar. Bailey was unavailable, but Belly did appear on the show. Dunbar appealed to the viewers to keep the lines open, and eventually someone claiming to be the Zodiac called several times and said his name was Sam. Belly agreed to meet with him in Daly City, but the suspect never showed up. On November the 8th, 1969, the Zodiac mailed a card with the cryptogram consisting of 340 characters. The 340 character cipher has never been decoded. Numerous possible solutions have been suggested, but none can be claimed as definitive. On November the 9th, 1969, the Zodiac mailed a 7-letter page stating that two policemen stopped and actually spoke with him 3 minutes after he shot Stein. Excerpts from the letter were published in the Chronicle on November the 12th, including the Zodiac's claim. That same day, Officer Don Falk wrote a memo explaining what had happened the night of Stein's murder. On December the 20th, 1969, exactly 1 year after the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the Zodiac mailed a letter to Belly that included another swatch of Stein's shirt. The Zodiac said he wanted Belly to help him. So, the contemporary public speculation and Zodiac claims. Various authors speculated at the time of the killings that other murders may have been the work of the Zodiac, but none have been confirmed. And here's just a few of these cases. Robert Domingos, 18, and Linda Edwards, shot and killed on the 4th, 1963 on a beach near Gaviota. There are specific similarities between their attack and the Zodiac's attack at Lake Berryessa 6 years later. Sherry Jo Bates, 18, stabbed to death and nearly decapitated on October the 30th, 1966 at Riverside City College in Riverside. Bates' possible connection to the Zodiac only appeared 4 years after he murdered, when San Francisco Chronicle reporter Paul Avery received a tip regarding similarities between the Zodiac killings and the circumstances surrounding Bates' death. Donna Lass, 25, last seen September the 6th, 1970 in State Line, Nevada. Postcard with an advertisement from Forest Pines condominiums near Incline Village at Lake Tahoe, pasted on the back, was received at the Chronicle on March 22, 1971. No evidence had been uncovered to connect Lass's disappearance with the Zodiac killer, however. And Kathleen Johns, 22, allegedly abducted on March 22, 1970 on Highway 132 near I-1580 in an area of West Modesto. Johns escaped the car of a man who drove her and her infant daughter around the area between Stockton and Paterson for approximately 1.5 hours. Now we get into that report from Kathleen Johns. On the night of March 22, 1970, Kathleen Johns was driving from San Bernardino to Petaluma to visit her mother. She was 7 months pregnant and had her 10-month-old daughter beside her. While heading west on Highway 132 near Modesto, a car behind her began honking its horn and flashing its headlights. She pulled off the road and stopped. The man in the car parked behind her, approached her car, stated that he observed that her right rear wheel was wobbling and offered to tighten the lug nuts. After finishing his work, the man drove off, yet when Johns pulled forward to re-enter the highway, the wheel almost immediately came off the car. The man returned, offering to drive her to the nearest gas station for help. She and her daughter climbed into the car. During the ride, the car passed several service stations, but the man did not stop. For about 90 minutes, he drove back and forth around the back roads near Tracy. When Johns asked why he was not stopping, he would change the subject. When the driver finally stopped at an intersection, Johns jumped out with her daughter and hid in a field. The driver searched for her using his flashlight, telling her that he would not hurt her before eventually giving up. Unable to find her, he got back into the car and drove off. Johns hitched a ride to the police station in Paterson. When Johns gave a statement to the sergeant on duty, she noted the police composite sketch of Paul Stein's killer and recognized him as the man who had abducted her and her child. Fearing he might come back and kill them all, the sergeant had Johns wait in the dark at the nearby Mills restaurant. When her car was found, it had been gutted and torched. Most accounts say he threatened to kill her and her daughter while driving them around, but at least one police report disputes that. John's account to Paul Avery of the Chronicle indicates her abductor left the car and searched for her in the dark with a flashlight. However, in one report she made to the police, she stated he did not leave the vehicle. So we have further Zodiac communications. Zodiac continued to communicate with authorities for the remainder of 1970 via letters and greeting cards to the press. In a letter postmarked April the 20th, 1970, the Zodiac wrote, "My name is blank," followed by a 13-character cipher. The Zodiac went on to state that he was not responsible for a recent bombing of a police station in San Francisco, referring to the February 18th, 1970 death of Sergeant Brian McDonnell 2 days after the bombing at Park Station in Golden Gate Park, but added there is more glory to killing a cop than a SID, because a cop can shoot back. The letter included a diagram of a bomb the Zodiac claimed he would use to blow up a school bus. At the bottom of the diagram he wrote, "Zodiac equals 10, SFPD equals 0. Zodiac sent a greeting card postmarked April the 20th, 1970 to the Chronicle. Written on the card was, "I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast," following the Zodiac's cross-circle signature. On the back of the card, the Zodiac threatened to use the bus bomb soon unless the newspaper published the full details he wrote. He also wanted to start seeing people wearing some nice Zodiac buttons. In a letter postmarked June 26, 1970, the Zodiac stated he was upset that he did not see people wearing Zodiac buttons. He wrote, "I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38. The Zodiac was possibly referring to the murder of Sergeant Richard Raditich a week earlier on June the 19th at 5:25 a.m. Raditich was writing a parking ticket in his squad car when an assailant shot him in the head with a .38 caliber pistol. Raditich died 15 hours later. San Francisco Police Department denies the Zodiac was involved in this murder. It remains unsolved. Included with the letter was a Phillips 66 road map of the San Francisco Bay Area. On the image of Mount Diablo, the Zodiac had drawn a cross circle similar to the ones he had included in previous correspondence. At the top of the cross circle he placed a 0 and then 3, then a 3, 6 and a 9. The accompanying instructions stated that the 0 was to be set to magnitude n. The letter also included a 32-letter cipher that the killer claimed would, in conjunction with the code, lead to the location of a bomb he had buried and set to go off in the fall. The cipher was never decoded and the alleged bomb was never located. The killer signed the note with Zodiac equals 12, San Francisco Police Department equals 0. In a letter to the Chronicle postmarked July 24, 1970, the Zodiac took credit for Kathleen John's abduction 4 months after the incident. In a July 26, 1970 letter, the Zodiac paraphrased a song from The Mikado, adding his own lyric about making a little list of the ways he planned to torture his slaves in paradise. The letter was also signed with a large, exaggerated cross symbol and a new score, Zodiac equals 13, SFPD equals 0. A final note at the bottom of the letter stated, P.S. The Mount Diablo code concerns radians, plus hashtag inches along the radians. In 1981, a close examination of the radian hinted by Zodiac researcher Glenn Penn led to the discovery that a radian angle, when placed over the map per Zodiac's instructions, pointed to the location of 2 Zodiac attacks. On December 7, 1970, the Chronicle received a 3x5-inch card signed by the Zodiac with the Zodiac symbol and a small cross reportedly drawn with blood. The card's message was formed by pasting words and letters from an edition of the Chronicle. 13 holes were punched across the card. Inspectors Armstrong and Toshi agreed it was highly probable the card came from the Zodiac. Where are we? Don't know. So, the letter to Paul Avery. On October 27, 1970, Chronicle reporter Paul Avery, who had been covering the Zodiac case, received a Halloween card signed with a Z and the Zodiac's cross circle symbol. Handwritten on the card was the note, Peekaboo, you are doomed. The threat was taken seriously and received a front-page story on the Chronicle. Soon after receiving this letter, Avery received an anonymous letter alerting him to the similarities between the Zodiac's activities and the unsolved murder of Sherry Jo Bates, which had occurred 4 years earlier at the City College in Riverside in the greater Los Angeles area, more than 400 miles south of San Francisco. He reported his findings in the Chronicle on November 16, 1970. And of course we go on to that Riverside murder. On October 30th, 1966, ironically near Halloween, 18-year-old Sherry Jo Bates, a student of Riverside Community College, spent the evening at the campus library annex until it closed at 9 p.m. Neighbors reported hearing a scream around 10:30 p.m. Bates was found dead the next morning, a short distance from the library between 2 abandoned houses, slated to be demolished for campus renovations. The wires in her Volkswagen's distributor cap had been pulled out. She was brutally beaten and stabbed to death. A man's Timex watch with a torn wristband was found nearby. The watch had stopped at 12:24, but police believed the attack occurred much earlier. A month later, on November 29, 1966, nearly identical typewritten letters were mailed to the Riverside Police and the Riverside Press Enterprise titled The Confession. The author claimed responsibility for the Bates murder, providing details of the crime that were not released to the public. The author warned that Bates is not the first and she will not be the last. In December 1966, a poem was discovered carved into the bottom side of a desktop in the Riverside City College Library, titled Sick of Living / Unwilling to Die. The poem's language and handwriting resembled that of the Zodiac's letter. It was signed with what were assumed to be the initials RH. During the 1970 investigation, Sherwood Morrill, California's top questioned document examiner, expressed his opinion that the poem was written by the Zodiac. On April 30th, 1967, exactly 6 months after the Bates murder, Bates' father Joseph, the Press Enterprise, and the Riverside Police all received nearly identical letters in a handwritten scrawl. The Press Enterprise and Police copies read, "Bates had to die, there will be more," with a small scribble at the bottom that resembled the letter Z. Joseph Bates's copy read, "She had to die, there will be more," this time without the Z signature. On March 13, 1971, 5 months after Avery's article, linking Zodiac to the Riverside murder, the Zodiac mailed a letter to the Los Angeles Times. In the letter, he credited the police instead of Avery for discovering his Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. The connection between Cherry Joe Bates, Riverside, and the Zodiac remains uncertain. Paul Avery and the Riverside Police Department maintain that the Bates homicide was not committed by the Zodiac, but did concede some of the Bates letters may have been his work to claim credit falsely. And on to the Lake Tahoe disappearance. On March 22nd, 1971, a postcard to the Chronicle addressed to Paul Avery and believed to be from the Zodiac appeared to claim responsibility for the disappearance of Donna Lass on September 6, 1970. Made from a collage of advertisements and magazine lettering, it featured a scene from an advertisement for Forest Pines condominiums and the text "Sierra Club, sought victim 12, peeked through the pines, past Lake Tahoe areas and around in the snow." Zodiac's cross circle symbol was in both the place of the usual return address and the lower right section of the front face of the postcard. Lass was a nurse at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. She worked until about 2 a.m. on September 6, 1970, treating her last patient at 1:40 a.m. Later that same day, both Lass's employer and her landlord received phone calls from an unknown male falsely claiming Lass had left town due to a family emergency. Lass was never found. What appeared to be a gravesite was discovered near the Claire Tappan Lodge in Northern California on Sierra Club property, but an excavation yielded only a pair of sunglasses. No evidence has been uncovered to connect the last disappearance with the Zodiac killer definitively. Now, the Santa Barbara murders. In a Vallejo Times-Herald story appearing on November 13, 1972, Bill Baker of the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office postulated that the 1963 murders of a young couple in northern Santa Barbara County might have been the work of the Zodiac killer. On June 4, 1963, high school senior Robert Domingos and fiancée Linda Edwards were shot dead on a beach near Lompoc, having skipped school that day for senior ditch day. Police believed that the assailant attempted to bind the victims, but when they freed themselves and attempted to flee, the killer shot them repeatedly in the back and chest with a .22 caliber weapon. The killer then placed their bodies in a small shack and then tried unsuccessfully to burn the structure to the ground. Now on to the final Zodiac letter. After the Pines card, the Zodiac remained silent for nearly 3 years. The Chronicle then received a letter from the Zodiac postmarked January 29, 1974, praising The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy that I've ever seen. The letter included a snippet of verse from The Mikado and an unusual symbol at the bottom that has remained unexplained by researchers. Zodiac concluded the letter with a new score: Me equals 37, SFPD equals 0. So there have been many speculations as to who the Zodiac killer was, and I want to bring your attention to one I saw in a documentary recently. It was an American documentary. In it was Aphrodite Jones, which some Americans may know from crime programs, and she was going back over the case to see if she could find new information. And any leads that could point towards who the Zodiac Killer was. And in that documentary, she spoke to a man who believed that his stepfather was the Zodiac Killer, and had a recording of his stepfather admitting that he was the Zodiac Killer. And this man's identity in question was a guy called Jack Torrance. And he compared, the stepson compared the Zodiac Killer's handwriting to his stepfather Jack Torrance's handwriting, and it was similar. Even a handwriting expert said there was a lot of similarities in the writing that would point to this man as the killer. But one great piece of evidence was the fact that this stepson had been continuously being pointed towards a specific piece of audio equipment that his stepdad once owned. This happened to be a speaker. When the stepson undid and went inside of the speaker, there, in all its glory, was a Zodiac mask worn in the one killing. So whilst it seems this guy, Jack Torrance, is a very likely the killer, we will never know. It bears resemblance to Jack the Ripper in this country in the fact of there could be very convincing evidence pointing towards a killer, but ultimately we'll never know. And the excitement comes from not knowing. And that's what people like about the case. And that closes the book on the Zodiac Killer. And now, I hope you have enjoyed this video, this Halloween edition of The Dark Ground. Keep your eyes peeled for more. And I just want to say, Happy Halloween, and I hope you celebrate Halloween in the best way that you can, given the current circumstances within the world right now. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if there's any suggestions on any serial killers you want me to cover, or even any subjects you want us to cover in any video, or any gaming video you want to see, any game you want to see us play. So don't forget, sleep tight, and don't forget that what's under the bed is the least of your worries. Until next time, sleep tight.